Okay, so this little video is not intended to go over every possible contingency for installing these windows in vans. It's just to give you a bit of an overview. You can go to our library page on our website, and we have several documents there. One is consideration for fitment, and the other is several documents that have dimensional information on it that will show you the dimensions of the blinds and the windows. If you pay somebody to do your installation for you, make sure that they understand how these windows work and what these considerations are so that they can properly install your windows as well. And I think that's about it. This is David with Tern Overland, and I'm going to take a few minutes to discuss the considerations of fitment for our windows in vans. This particular van is a Sprinter. The interior structure of this van is similar to most of these utility vans in that they have major support structures, and then they have minor support structures that are in the panels here where the windows or other things can go. You don't ever want to cut into these major structural components in the van because these have to do with the strength of the van. But these smaller stiffeners that they have on the panels here, these can be cut. Now this particular van has Dynamat that's been installed, so it's a little difficult to see these minor support structures. This is a sound deadening material, but this stuff can be cut away without any damage to the van whatsoever. Now I've got a cardboard cutout here of a 450 by 900 window that we carry, and you can see that would be a really easy fit into this space. There's a few things that you want to make sure that you always maintain when you're installing these windows or deciding which size to use. One of them is that you always want a very minimum of 3 inches between the edge of the cut hole and the edge of the support. And you see this support actually comes down and ends right here. So you want 3 inches from this point over to where this window would begin. So you could set that window there, or you could shift it to the front, or you could put it in the middle, but you don't want less than 3 inches on this side. On the top and the bottom, you want a minimum of 1.5 inches. And that's going to mean you have to cut this support away as well, because you just want the sheet metal there, not the support. And the reason is there's a little bit of curvature to this wall. It's not much, but it's a little bit. And the windows are flat. So when you tighten these things together, the sheet metal has to conform to the window. So that's why you need to have this space, because you need the flexibility in the sheet metal so that it can make that conformality onto this window. Now I'm going to show you a larger window. This is probably the largest window that would fit in this space. This is a 550 by 1100, and the space that we're looking at in this particular van is behind the driver's seat. You can see that when this gets in here, it really fills this space up. And it gets close here. So now I've got to be very careful about how I center this up. Now this will just barely go in here. Should be fine. But you definitely wouldn't want anything any larger than this in this space. You got a good gap here, about 3 inches. And you still got room up here to get 1.5 inches or more on the top and the bottom. But this is the biggest window that would go into this space. Now once you decide which window will fit in the space, the other considerations are that the minimum wall thickness on our windows is 1 inch, which means you can't screw it directly to the sheet metal. It's got to have a wall thickness of a very minimum. It's actually 15/16, a little bit less than 1 inch. And then there's a rubber seal that on this side that needs to compress. Now the window and the clamping ring are actually 2 pieces. So I'm going to split these apart to show you. And this goes in from the outside, and then this ring goes on from the inside, and that's what actually clamps the wall. And then you have a series of screws all the way around that hold this together. So the very minimum thickness that you're going to want here is 1 inch, and usually that's achieved by using a hardwood frame, or you can also use a metal frame. And you also want to leave enough wood past the edge of the window so that there's something for the blind to attach to. I'll show you. If I put the blind on here, let's see. So the blind would attach from the inside just like this. And what it looks like from the other side, you can see that there's a hole in each corner, and those holes are where the screws go through to hold the blind onto the wall. So there needs to be a little bit of wood all the way around for the blind to screw onto. The other consideration when you're determining where to put this is to make sure that there's room for the blind, because the blind does extend a little above the window. So you want to make sure that you don't end up with a blind up against something like this where you can't actually install it. So if you put the window too close, once the blind goes on, you may actually be way too close to the point where it isn't actually going to fit. So we do have a number of different options in terms of sizes. I'll show you, this is a 450 by 1100, which is the same length as the other one that I just showed. It's quite long, goes the full distance, but it's a little bit shorter in this direction. So if you want just a little smaller window, this is a good choice, or the 450 by 900. I think that's all. Okay, so now I'm going to discuss the installation of one of our windows in the slider door. The installation of the slider door is just like any other panel in the van. You need the same type of clearances. You've got these stiffening pieces in here that you'll have to cut away to leave the bare sheet metal. And you'll have to build a frame in here just like with the other panels. But there is one consideration that you have to think about, and that is this corner. This corner down here really limits the size of the window that will fit in this door, because if it ends up too close like this, you're going to get yourself into trouble because the sheet metal is not going to want to move around that corner. So you need to leave a minimum of 3 inches from this corner to here, a minimum of 3 inches here, and a minimum of 3 inches on this side. Now this window that I'm showing right now, this cardboard, is a 450 by 900. And this is a popular size to put in the slider door because it gives you plenty of room around these possible constraints, and so you get a nice installation without running into problems with the flexibility of the sheet metal. So 450 by 900 is a good choice for this. So now I'm going to take a minute and just talk a little bit about your finishing options with the windows. If you do the 1-inch spacer thing, then of course the window is going to be down below the surface of this, and most people eventually want to put some sort of paneling over this major structure. This is the way that I actually like to do it, because what it does is it actually recesses the window into the wall a little bit, kind of like you would in a house where you have a windowsill all the way around and the window is recessed. But the other option, of course, is just to finish over the top of this and to make the window span the whole thickness of the wall. Now the windows that we have only go to 2 inches, and this ends up being more than 2 inches. It ends up being about 2 3/4 inches. So we have an expansion ring that you can buy that will actually get you out to here if this is the way you want to finish it. But the other way to finish it is, like I said, to start with the 1-inch spacer and to put the window in, and that way the blind is also going to be inset a little bit. So when you finish your wall, the blind's going to come down and it's going to be very close to finished right against the edge of the blind here, or the wall is going to be very close to the edge of the blind. But what that means is that you'll have to create a frame in here that will go from the inner wall to the outer wall that this all can sit into. And you want to make sure when you do that there's room to open this housing, because this housing has to be able to open to get the mounting screws in here. And this housing only needs to open about a 1/2 inch, which is about like that. But if you plan this right up against something like this, you're not going to be able to open it. So you have to leave a little bit of room from the top of this to this, at least a 1/2 inch, so that you can pop this open and get your screws in the corner. So those are really the two ways that this can be mounted. One is using a 1-inch spacer right against the sheet metal, and that's going to inset it inside the wall so that when you finish it off out here, it's going to be fairly even with the outside of the wall. That's the way that I prefer to do it. The other way is just to finish out the wall and then to create a hole through the whole thickness and then use one of our expansion rings to span the whole distance.